Hello there. It's real cold in here. I need to get my fire going again. I had it going earlier this morning. What to do? It got so cold that my regular furnace turned on. It's normally not how I want to roll. So let's see about maybe getting this going again. And then we're going to start fooling around with some programming, because of course we are. Specifically, what I've got in mind is more of that Godot video game I was doing. But first, let's see if I can make this wood catch fire. Odds are I can. And we'll see what else to do. As you know, it's winter time. You always got to start with the wood stove, right? It is not something I get to weasel out of. No, sir. So cold I didn't even need to use the fireplace gloves. I had to try to get more of those. I worked my way through these. Like this is the current glove, but this was from last year. Worn holes in it and everything. Now it's only good for covering up a grating on the floor. Okay, I'm going to be fussing with this as we get it rolling. But, hey, good to see you. Chad, how do you pronounce Guy 5P? Vinegar Jim, Jonathan. So let me show you what I've been busy with. And we'll get right going. Actually, this wants to start up like that. And that's going to start up. Look, new thing. So, well, now that's funny. Why are you, don't mind me making sense of all this. Remember this? That is our bot. Well, now we've got a different thing, and it is called rock. And as you can see, I've got a little vignetted version. I need to make that part transparent, but maybe it simply doesn't show as transparent here. We shall see. Soon enough we shall see. And we've got another little detail as well. If we zoom right in on this, whoop. Look, we have a rock, and this is going to be asteroid-sized, and I've got multiple things going on here. See, here is collision shape 3D, and then here's mesh instance. And we've got our material with albedo texture, but a new thing. See, without that, this is the sort of base level texture for this, but we have something in Godot that I'm using for a first time here because there was no good reason to use it in the bots. That is detail on. And this is a slightly different texture. This one I'm calling, I gave each names. See whether they're shown here. Yeah, Rock Albedo, Rock Billboard, and Rock Micro. So Albedo has, let's see, does it show here? Kind of does. Looks like they all look a little bit different, but what I'm doing here is adding one texture on top of another. I haven't yet seen this in the actual game. That's because I did this before rushing off and doing something else, and I've only just come back to be able to see how this works out in real life. UV2 does this. If it is just normal scale, then that is the other texture being overlaid over the first texture at exactly the same size. But check it out, you don't have to. See, if scale is 2, see, it's a little bit larger. And it looks like it's rotating, but that's not really it rotating. That is it. I didn't realize I could drag it to the side like that. Expanding or contracting. Full size. And you can kind of see underneath the other texture is not changing. And as we keep going, we keep tiling it differently. Until the tiles on top of this are getting ever smaller, up to the point and you can still kind of see the texture underneath, but then the texture on top is so shrunk down that if you flew really close to it, it would still look like it had detail on its texture. So yeah, I am probably not going to need to make it be a 64 by 64 layering, but I may very well be able to make it smaller than I had, because I had it at 16. You can see a certain amount of the tiliness. That is just because I did these textures on the fly before even showing up here. Also, I'm going to keep an eye out to make sure that is still working. Groogs, I showed up on Zion James' live stream to congratulate him and say it was the coolest thing I ever saw. I have indeed seen that video, and it was so cool to see. So yeah, it's a question of layering these two textures on top of each other, so if you zoom in real close, it still looks like there's detail. And honestly, maybe 32 is too big, and 16 is a little closer to being able to zoom up. Again, you can see these squares there. Those are because my tiling texture is not entirely perfect. But yeah, so I made this, and I can save it. I also made one of these. This is the Guardian. It is the black hole that comes and tries to attack you if you've smashed bots too much. I don't have that up and running, but I do have it live in the game. It's just not doing anything, nor do I have it at a reasonable size. So give me a second here, because I'm going to try something. Move that to here. See, I have another node for building these onto it, and I have code. Oh, no, that's not even the right place. Hang on. No. I have code for it. There's nothing much to do with the code, but that said, I can take some of the information from this and have it do appropriate things. So firstly, maybe it's player that I want to look at for this. Yeah. Because here's our repositioning stuff. So we have a physics counter. And likewise, we'll have a physics counter here. There's one of these for each individual object. I keep clicking in the wrong place. Don't mind me. I know how I can fix that, though. We'll move this to where it is overlapping properly. I guess I made this be a full-size window. And then this too can be overlapping the screen so I can stream and have it showing exactly what it needs to show. And then I won't be clicking in the wrong place and having it not work. Then I was going to look at, say, physics counter. Ready gets this. That means that the physics counter is randomized when it is created. And then some of this stuff can be just directly copied over, because position applies to whatever the thing is, whether it's player, bot, or whatever. And these are all having to... Oh, I'm going to have to bring in something, though. I can, though. It's fine. So firstly, copy that. I'm going to paste it here, but it's not going to do anything yet. Actually, you know what? Let's not even do that yet. Or maybe I'll just put it in the wrong place. See, we don't have a world size variable yet, but there's one here. Each of these needs to have its own individual world size, because I don't know how to read it from the... That's the first thing we do. Also, give me a moment. I am going to throw another log on the fire, and I have some nicely warmed up water in lieu of tea that I'm going to go grab. I think I'm also going to turn the furnace down. You may hear it rumbling away down there. Okay. That fire's probably going to catch and go. There's at least one Eurorack module which is able to load Airwindows plugins. I'm just rereading chat. I need to set it to live chat rather than top chat. I missed that. I see people talking about Godot versus Unreal. I've actually got an Unreal installed on this computer, but it's a really old version because I haven't been keeping it up to date because I haven't been doing anything with it. So let's turn that. So here we are. We're in Rock. We have to have world size. Not only that, there is a further thing that I must remember to do in Node 3D. So what happens here is that we keep having to pass the startup information about what world size is over to where the thing is. So after doing add child, and it auto-completed pretty good that time. That was so obvious that even the computer was able to figure it out. So what is happening here is we're doing total bots and then spawning them. Spawn bot runs this does all of this stuff, and then it goes from there. I can also sneak this in here. It'll want me to indent things, but I can do that. And now I should be able to actually run this, and it will do something even if it doesn't do what I wanted. Make sure that this is alive. That's fine. Physics counter is not updating properly. I've got that in all of this stuff. In this case, this is running in process as the other one is. Process means it runs literally every time. And what this means is it is going to periodically be looking for whether the position is out of bounds and then fixing it. But it doesn't do it in every axis at once. It's looking up only one axis at a time. Oh, well, we'll show you in a moment, Simone. I am almost to the point of being able to show you. Let's give that a run and see what we got. So I did want to dim this down too. It's very pretty, but it's also very bright. So what this is my guardian. And it's like a black hole. I need to make this sort of shimmery tracery of lights around it to have that working properly. And it has collision, so if I bump into it, assuming you can see it, it bounces away. We don't have anything. Oh, no, we do have something visible. Look at that. So I can seek this thing out. It is hanging around in whatever spot it wants to hang out. It is a red bot, so it's hanging around in a particular place in space and kind of going back and forth like this because it's following the pixels on its map, but they're all basically the same color. And when we have lots of these, more happens. Speaking of which, let's have lots of these and more will happen. So Rock should be updating, although all that's happening is its location. Ooh, it has leaks. Okay. Well, that's fair. I don't exactly know what that's about, but I'm sure I can fix it in future. It's not going to... Oh, node not found. Okay. What's going on here? Ah. So it's trying to find player, although it doesn't actually care. So I needn't have this implemented just yet. I think it's fine. Yeah, it's not using that. So I don't need to run that. But, and this is placing it exactly in the middle, which is not necessarily what I want to do. And I'd like to do something similar to how these start up, which I'll get to in a minute. It's actually going to want more randomization. Or we can just be a little silly and we'll take the same answer, copy that, put it where rock lives. Position will relate to rock now. And world size is going to be the same size. And so what should happen now when I run this is we've got that, and then we should have a series of, oh, and we don't, do we? I thought for sure I was going to be able to spawn some of those asteroid thingies that I made, and yet that did not happen. We overrode the position, so the physics engine should have forced it to bounce away in some direction. And yet that did not happen. So next question is finding out what I'm missing. So here's another thing. These are using system Godot and namespace counterpart. I bet I need to have that in rock.cs. I bet it'll be happier now. Although it may or may not have literally stopped it from working. We'll use a larger number, but this time, rather than just doing these, we are attempting to spawn new instances of rock on rock. So this is what we're doing. And we could have it be a separate unit. So that might be a fine idea. Then these get deleted because these are the bot spawning, and these get kept. What's its little problem? Oh, we haven't been incrementing. That explains a lot, doesn't it? So needs to do that, then it will actually count. And I am a little curious as to whether I need to be updating something here. So we've got this material and stuff. That is to make the bots, check a little to see that the stove is working, be a correct position. But I don't know what I'm doing with regard to when these start up like this. See, this is actually something that the rock needs to also do. And I've got the same names. Hi, look at this. Hey, we've got more stuff to do. We've got more stuff even to do with copying everything from bot into rock. So let's see. Copy that. That's in ready. This one has mesh nodes too. And it's meant to place them like that. We don't have to do this stuff with materials because we're not actually doing anything to change the skin of it. They're all gray rocks. Also, they don't have brains, so they don't need to do that stuff. However, position might be a good thing to do there. We're not doing anything with position here, so I'll do a change from there. And it also, okay, we have already randomized physics counter, that's fine. So rather than the position making everything be exactly in the center, we're going to randomize. And we're not looking for a world brain, we're looking for world size, which is not an int, but we can probably still use it. So let's see. And then it's going to be a different random each time. So we'll just paste it each time. And I need a parenthesis. There we go. Okay, now there's further stuff in process that needs to be done. We got some stuff in here that the other one also needs, and it's this, which means they need to have a working where player position. So I'll ignore that for the moment. And we're going to see, firstly, what's going on in here. We'll have there be 32 bots. Actually, no, I was going to show you what this looked like, so we might as well pump it up a bit. 400 bots. That way, at least you'll see that, and then we'll see whether it creates any asteroids or whether I have not got there yet. Rolling. Now there's a trick. The catch is all of the asteroids are tiny. They are all the size of these guys. These are what I call bots. The idea of the game is that you'll be flying around in space and you will find the one that looks like you. How do you know what looks like you? Well, there's further stuff to be done around that. But they're all kind of doing their own thing. They're going around various places doing various things, and the places they go are relative to what color they are. And there's a bunch of extra stuff in here. See, here's a set of yellow guys that are sort of hanging around with each other. And then here's a set of dark colored ones that are hanging out here, except for when they're running off somewhere else. They bounce. Those two are buddy-buddy. They're just stuck together. There's another set which is much like them. They are stuck together being real close. There's like 128 different colors of these guys. And they're all running around doing their thing. Now, my concern here is I do not see any of the asteroids. And one of the things I meant to do was figure out how to scale up the asteroids. Although currently I don't know if I see any of them. So I do not know whether it's going to come out before GTA 6. I can't promise there's no way it's going to come out before 2026, for what that's worth. So let's see whether... something is not closing properly. So I'm going to want to deal with that at some point. Ooh, okay. There's a problem. Object reference, that might explain why it ain't starting with the line 66. What's line 66? Aha! Rock gather, add child rock. Something about this is not working. Let's find out why. That would explain why I'm not seeing any of these guys. I've set up to try to make hundreds of them. Well, now I've set it up to try to make hundreds of them, but it ain't working. So object reference not set to an instance of an object. So what are we doing that's different? Because this should work, that should work, that should work. I'm basically not having anything change here. In fact, we can smush these together a little bit so that it's even more obvious that that should be working the same. See, it's the scene, the rock, the node 3D. If I go back over to Godot and node 3D here, you see that in fact I am connecting to a scene. You can say rock scene, load it, and that's the one. I don't think anything's hidden. I don't think anything... These would be the same. See, bots here, rocks there. I don't see it. They don't have scripts to them. This does get to spawn, but we're having a little trouble with these. So maybe... I should change the capitalization to be all the same. Stranger things have happened. Let's find out whether that is the problem. There, now it is capital letters. Was that what I was calling for in the other thing? Was I looking, is it cap sensitive? It certainly seems to want to have that script be the same. Back to here. Looking for that to be a object. It was seeing it the same that time too, but and then get node 3D bots. Oh, have I not done this properly? So bot gatherer, get node 3D. I'm also doing rock gatherer. I think I have to do that outside the loop. Let's find out. Wait, have I even done that once? Have I even done that at all? Let's find out. Copy. Well, now, where did I do that thing? So in theory, there's your problem right there. I did not actually assign it. So we need to assign that. Let's find out what happens if I just straight up run it without doing anything else. Oh, hi. Looks very much like I have something happening here. Are they in fact randomized? A bunch of them look like they're not. Those are my asteroids, no question about it. Do they have collision? They have collision. They didn't do much. That's because I need to edit their physics. That's also why they didn't keep moving. It's coming to a stop. Okay, so let's fix that immediately. But another thing I'm going to want to do is change their size. And I believe I need to do that in the startup script. But we've got that working now. So where's that startup script and why is it not doing what I thought? Position should be getting randomized. I am not seeing it do that, although I believe it has updated these things. So we're at least in with a start with that. Also, let me continue fussing with the fire. That fire did not start out very big. Yeah, we're going to get it going a little more. It's cold in here. I doubtless will be able to do more time on a stream on Thursday, so that should be fun. But maybe we'll be able to get a lot of fun things happening up to that point. Oh, also, oh, nope, that had water in it. Finding out whether the kettle had water in it. Alrighty. That should be able let's see if I can do something else. Was that how you did that? No, apparently not. Rand range. Well, we need it to be floating point anyhow, so that part's fine. So can't modulus it. Maybe it wasn't able to modulus a floating point number. It might have worked better if I'd cast it. And let's see, double or int. Interesting. Why are you not able to do that? Is it simply because this has to be cast to float as well? No, it wants doubles, doesn't it? Well, I can make that be double, but then do I have to cast this to double? Or is it simply that position needs to be a float? Well, firstly, let's see what happens if we straight up cast it to float. Okay. At that point, it is happy, so we will go with that. And again, this is hopefully with the purpose of making it scatter these around randomly. Once we can do that, we can start playing with the size of it, which will also apply to what I'm doing with Guardian. Guardian is, of course, that giant mobile black hole that chases the player. I got to do some graphic stuff with Guardian first, but let's firstly see, now that we are creating some of these things. In fact, I bet you we can create lots and lots of these things. See, we're creating a Guardian. We can move this part down to where it belongs. We'll make more of them. We will see how that even runs. Now bear in mind these are all very passive. I haven't even fixed the physics yet. But we seem to be quite able to have these here. It's just that the size is not what you'd call impressive. Let's see what happens with scale. Now hang on a second. Okay, this should not work, but we may be able to make it not work in an amusing way. What happens when we just try to make all of them the size of the entire universe? What do we see? It did nothing. That's a sign that I'm missing something. And then here is the void of space, which is showed up right next to me again. It's not moving. And its physics engine has it being very passive. Bots are still alive and moving. We've got like zillions of asteroids, but they are all still relentlessly tiny. So scale, that's not working. But some of this Git node stuff might be amenable. We will try, well, they're not going to want any of the get node things to be updated. But what else can we do? Well, for starters, we can see to it that things are moving around a little bit more lively than they were. Here's the rigid body. We're going to assume it is heavy. Friction, probably. Okay, that's fine. That's the surface of the object. It'll be bouncy. Gravity scale is 0. So far, so good. Linear and angular velocity. I think if we make damp mode be 0, then it won't slow to a stop again. Same with angular velocity. They're not doing any, well, we also can have those off too. Now we're just seeing whether these are becoming mobile. And the thing that I'm running into with these is there is a concern. Here is, the node is a rigid body 3D. See, it says rigid body 3D here. This should have caused it to be able to move around. A lot of these resources don't have to be local to scene, so I can have them instanced. It can be just one of each kind of thing. Pretty sure that's how that works. We will find out by doing that and seeing whether the whole thing ceases to work. Because I'm pretty sure what I was doing originally with the bots was I had to make all the instances local to the scene so they could have individual textures. Without that, but these don't have individual textures, so it Should not matter. Okay, so instances, and then the billboards. If these, I think, were individual, I guess we'll find out whether they worked or not. Yeah, so what I was in here doing was trying to stop them having all of that drag and resistance. I think I succeeded. So we run again. Here we have these stationary rocks everywhere. Now I could make them move, but what I'm looking to do right now is these should be huge. They should be taking up a lot more space because we are able to zoom in on them and look at them kind of up close. They're also more smooth. The bots have very clear textures. These are more grayscale and smoothed off. I can get rid of that faint implication of the lines there, the squared off lines there, by going and editing the texture, which I would do. I don't need to do it today, but what I would be doing is going in, looking at the texture and offsetting the texture by about half the size of itself. And I don't know if I have that actual ability. I'm using Affinity Photo for this, but you know, Clip Studio Paint might have it. In Photoshop, what you would do is offset by half the size, at which point the entire thing will sort of wrap, and then you can see where the seams are. And where previously there were seams will now become none. Now we see whether this actually collides. And if so, oh, I know what's going on. It's heavy. I made it be very heavy so it ain't moving, which is fine. Up. It now was moving a tiny little bit. Boink. Boink. I think it still came to a stop though. So we'll be able to see more about this later. I was in the middle of trying to make it be much larger than it is, but I got slightly delayed by the fact that I wanted it to, at least to collide with it, so there's that. I had been running into a problem, and this is the problem. See, Node 3D, here is scale. So in theory, I can make this guy much bigger. And in fact, those specs on the outside, those don't necessarily need to scale up. Maybe they do. But if I've scaled it to that size and then saved, I believe that is what I was trying to do by code, but I feel like it didn't actually work. So let's find out whether that did actually work. Okay, we can see some of those guys. Here's our big giant world, except for it's clearly not. It's very heavy. It's a heavy rock. I am bouncing off of it quite violently. But scale did nothing. I should be able to zoom in to way closer than that. So what we did here, see how it's much larger and then these guys are still very small? It did not honor scale. It's still exactly this size. So my next question is, can I go and edit Mesh Instance 3D's scale instead? And that will look the same. See, we're making it be an instance, and we're scaling it up until it is larger than any of the other stuff around it. Our collision shape is still tiny. So we're going to put that back and hit save and go back into the program. And now we find out whether we can go and, so some of this is still not working. We could also do it with Guardian. There's the thing. So position has been set to exactly the middle of everything. We have exactly the same things in each one. They all have a mesh instance. They all have a collider. And like what we're doing, let me go back to here for long enough to demonstrate what this is actually about. So this is going to be a little bit busier this time. We're playing a game that looks kind of like this. These guys are all derping around doing their things. They move around of their own volition. They blink. That stuff is basically up and running. It is working at this time. And there's lots of these. They're all in their sort of own little location. However, we also have those asteroid things there. So if I scoot over to here, we can see one of these guys up close. That's an orange glowing orb. There goes another one. And what it's doing is it's hanging around. The reason it's changing colors like that is because we have this infinite space. What do I mean by infinite space? Okay, see these orange guys? I can go in this direction indefinitely. And we can just keep going and going and going and going and going as if I had spawned infinitely many of these little guys. Like no limit to how many of these I'd spawned. And then end up here, go closer to one of them, or indeed this pair. And I've decided to go in opposite directions, but for a brief shining moment you saw that that was a couple of guys hanging out, and you get closer to them and you can get up to it being a nice evenly located sphere. All of that stuff updates, and then we can take the, oh, look at there, and there we have one of our asteroids instead. Now there's stuff that I could do with these that might prove interesting. But the first thing I need to do is make these and only these huge, at which point all these moving guys will find their way around them. You are the size of one of those moving animated guys. The map size is effectively infinite, because I'm playing programmer tricks to make it seem as if it was infinite. So, oh. I was finding out what somebody said, what the hell, Vinegar Jim? And Vinegar Jim had said that Rockstar was spending $300 million on water physics. Okay, I'm doing space physics and spending much less. So, this worked so far. So here's where we try to scale some of these things. If we can scale these, we can scale Guardian. And I still need to put some more graphics on Guardian, but in order to do that, I have to do a shader. To do Guardian properly, I have to draw some spheres, meshes, showing only the vertexes and edges. And so that's a shader. The rest of it is fairly simple. But that is from the original Counterpart game, is it needs to have some spheres surrounding the black hole that it is. And then they expand if it takes notice of you and starts chasing you. I mean, currently I do not even have Guardian able to find you because this code didn't work. And I'm going to need that code because that code also updates a thing that I'm going to need to update here. Just for tidiness, I'm going to move these down. So those mesh instances may very well need to be scaled up too. In which case, literally every single instance would have to be scaled up. So I might have a lot of code sitting around here. But first things first, let's find out whether we can scale up the mesh instance. Not sure why it's talking about this. There's some suggestion. That's not a typo. I meant it to be that. This is JetBrains writer thinking it's cleverer than me. That is absolutely not XYLEM. It absolutely is Mesh Billboard XYPM. Because it's X and Y and then positive and then minus. So I correct you. Silly thing. But let's start with this. And let's look up what the actual name of the thing is. It's Mesh Instance 3D and Mesh Instance 3D 2 it's going to be. And then we're going to try to alter scale from in here. And then just for fun, we're going to make all of these rocks be half the size of the universe. They're not going to have colliders yet. But let's see if it did the thing. If it did, it'll look pretty funny. Might end up looking pretty funny. Aha! We successfully did the thing. Look, these don't have colliders, but these are the surface of interpenetrating planets where I can fly through oh, look, there's the space between them. And then the outside edge of the world, see, they're filling up the entire size of the world. So now we know what scale is. Scale can be edited on the fly. Scale needn't be a factor of world size, unless I want it to be. Can scale be not a vector 3? No, I don't think so. I think it has to be a vector 3. Unless, no. Unless we're starting up after all. You can multiply. It starts out as 1. So if we run this only once, then that. And then we have a collider. What's the name of the collider? Collider is Collision Shape 3D. It too should have, does have scale in Node 3D. So we should be able to scale this too. Then things are going to get more interesting. Owen Bullis, I'm quite happy to hear that. My hope was that I was going to be able to come up with something. So let's see, Collision Shape 3D. Of the same name. Then the other one. Now the funny thing about this is we are not apparently resetting the positions of that, and that seems wrong. But for now, let's live with it and see what we just made. That should have multiplied everything, including colliders, by 256. Oh boy, okay, something went terribly wrong. What are we looking at? Things are colliding real hard with something. Wow, okay. So this is a picture of the program being real upset. How about let's not scale up the extra sized one for now and see whether it does any better by just multiplying. One thing about it, that implied that the collision shape was actually becoming larger because it was freaking out. It implies that rather than just sitting there being visual, I don't know something I can do. Let's make there be way fewer rocks. We've got 100 of them. It was able to run with 100 of them, but now let's find out what happens when you don't have 100 of them. I most certainly do. Oh. Wow, okay. It became upset. But what made it be so upset? Let's make it be a lot smaller and see if it feels any better. If you were a size of 16, does that make you feel any better? Ah, see, look at that. So our positioning is not working, but we're starting to see what that was meant to be. Oh, hi. Okay, we're still taking up all the size of the universe, and I bet I know why. I saw another thing in there where it said scale, new vector 3, world size, world size, world size. There's no reason for that. That is a absolute lunacy. However, even 16 might be still too large, and our position is not working very well. So let's go over to here. So this is the size of real space. These guys are centering here. So we're not successfully having these teleporting around, but also look at the scale of them. See some of our bots derping around, doing various things. The bots may be actually moving these, but we've successfully made these huge. These are successfully very, very huge. Let's dial everything the heck back. It's the size of the whole damn universe. So, position is supposed to be random ranges from 0 to world size. Scale of 16 feels like it's making it much larger than just 16. Does scale of 2 give me something that looks like the size of twice the size of the other guys, or are we still way off? At least I'm getting this part to work, though. I got about an hour before I thaw out my taco food. Also, I got to keep an eye on the fire. Oh, hey, look at that. So there is the black hole in space, which I was also going to make be quite large. These guys are moving around freely. My aim and positioning is not great. And these look a lot more reasonable in size, and they should still be heavy. See, I'm bouncing right off. Wink. And not only that, at a size of 2, it's now a lot bigger than I am. So that's a good start. It feels like it's scaling in some weird, crazy way. Like I am multiplying. So what if... So that should be scale of everything, which doesn't necessarily mean it will be, but that should be the scale of everything. Also, we do not have any of the instancing. An observation for VisaJam-SC is the way this works is, yes, we can declare all of these build propositions like that. Do this stuff. And have collisions like that. But then in process, we have this going on. And this gets complicated and busy. In fact, I should be able to take this and plunk it directly into Rock. There won't be one in Guardian because Guardian... Well, actually, maybe there should. So process. That's what's wrapping them in size. But if I use this one, that's altering all the mesh instances. And it is also altering that collision shape D2 and mesh instance 3D2. That is a clone of the other one. And then we are even going and applying the geometry and scaling its size by how close it is to where player, which would mean that I have to make where player be working. And then there is the position wrapping again. And then that does nothing at this time. And then this is a crude method of making the stuff off in the distance not have to process as fast. But yeah, so I need to have where player position. And what we're doing here, we've got private player where player. Do we have it in Ruck? Haha, no we don't. Gonna need one of those. And then we instance it like this, unless it doesn't work. But it's in the same, it's in a different tree, but the same depth. So that should actually work. I mean, I can find out whether it does by running it and quitting it and seeing it if there's an error message. The rest of it won't have changed. Unless if things are much bigger, then the scaling by the object itself would work. Here's one of our asteroids. Nope, that's about the same as it was before. Also, this could do with having more vertices. But that is something that can be part of this other system. So here's where we get to all this. And these do have distinct names. It's plus on the x-axis, minus on the x-axis, plus on the y-axis, minus on the y-axis. Rock has all the same stuff. And they have distinct colliders, but they do not have distinct rigid body 3Ds, and that's relevant. I don't know exactly how relevant it is, but it should be relevant. And I'll tell you why. Because if you are looking across the edge of the universe at a phantasm, which doesn't actually have physical existence, it needs to be able to register if you do something with it. You can't actually hit it because the real existence of whatever the thing is off the opposite side of the universe. But all the same, and switch statement. We'll do this same stuff with this and see if it helps. So there's a copy. In fact, I'll include that comment. It's not in ready, it's in process. And then we're not doing physics counter like that. We're replacing everything. Ooh, okay, it wants process counter instead. Well, you know what? We can just rename that. There, same difference. See, the physics engine updates like 30 times a second. The frame rate will go as fast as it can. And I'm interleaving all of these updates with regard to the frame rate rather than actually the physics engine. It might actually run slower, but the physics engine will work harder to try to keep up with physics engine stuff. This is basically overrides. In specific, this is replacing the location of, yeah, it's snapping the 3D object to the location of the nearest billboard-sized thing. Those, it might look kind of amusing once we get to it. Let's see what's going on here, too, because we have a problem, and the problem is we don't have rough distance here. And that's something we keep editing, but that is very much just how close is this object to where the player is. So I need to take that from here. That also has to live in the object. And we're even going to start it up. We have almost certainly assigned it to something in starting up. Yeah, we assigned it to 256. So rock does the same thing. If I want to be really, I can have these be in the same order. But for now, let's see what we got. We're not going to be able to see any of these get mesh instance nodes, but we should be able to see both the bots moving around. They also blink. But we can also see these. So it is doing that because it is trying to update the number of vertices it has. And it seems to be snapping back and forth between a couple of different answers. So it's not entirely happy about that. It keeps snapping right back again. I don't think this scale is doing diddly. Let's call it 32 and see if that helps any. I bet it does nothing. Scale seems to have a lot more of an effect than I would have ever guessed either. But that's probably because this is all... Yep, see, here's another one of these guys. Once you get close enough, it'll start kind of flipping out. It's supposed to be able to snap to this vertice count and leave it. It is not doing that. And scale does nothing, but we can fix that by because they can be all different scales too. We may be able to get it to update appropriately. None of these are the correct size, but all the same, they should relate to what we're trying to do. So what's going to happen if, well, I want to look at what this is doing though. That should work. I don't know if we need this. This is our positions. All of these are too heavy to move, so we're not worrying about that. And this is where it is updating or failing to update. So here's case 19. It's able to do this some of the time, and then some of the time it is not. We're not necessarily having that many of these, though. So we can exaggerate the effect by having it be like 6 and 3 as a minimum, and then so what would be happening is rough distance would be freaking out, and I don't know why that would be happening. We're apparently setting it in ready. We shouldn't be calling ready over and over again though, so that makes no damn sense. What do we got? Half of this is just observing it and seeing like what the crazy thing is doing this time. Hey! Well, it's not... I spoke too soon. It is bouncing around. So it wants to snap back to the original setting. And these are now apparently moving. Why? Because bots are kicking them around? Oh, or so I know what's happening. This is moving because there is another one of these off somewhere else that is rotating. And that's what's causing this craziness. And it is most definitely some extreme craziness. So let's try to fly away from the craziness. That's not going to work, I betcha. This needs debugging. Here's more of these guys. They are invisible, but this one's all freaking out very aggressively. So in order for this behavior to work, they have to be locked in rotation. What's happening is they're going crazy, and I'm not exactly sure what's causing the very colorful behaviors we're seeing. They're being affected by fog. And the rest of these guys are still normal, but our giant asteroids are not only becoming very low res, because we've told them to be, but they're also freaking out in a big way. So first order of business is I wanted it to be able to rotate, and that is clearly not the right answer. So node 3D. Here we've got stuff like collision. I don't think it's even collision shape or mesh instance we want. I'm pretty sure it's just the rigid body 3D. So axis lock. Because each of those phantom units there were locked to an axis and snapping around the other existence. When I say other existence, what I mean is this. There is a second mesh instance. It's a duplicate. It is being snapped to the position of one of these, whichever one of these is closer to the player. Closest one of these to the player, this gets snapped to its position. Until it doesn't really do anything very much. And I could also be scaling up these and we'd be able to see a little more clearly what's going on. Excuse me. O is a very rogue asteroid. It's about as roguist as you could possibly ask. So let's see. I believe I hit my axis locks. Yep. Do not necessarily want to axis lock linear because my thought, well, maybe I do. My thought was I would like to have this be movable, but I do have them being very heavy. And if they didn't move, it would simplify matters a little bit. So I don't know what the right answer is here. Again, I could turn on axis lock, and then it won't matter how heavy it is. I have the mass being enormously heavy, wouldn't matter in the slightest. It could be just infinite mass or whatever. But the reason I wasn't able to bounce it is because it's much heavier than me. Or the bots, for that matter. So let's see whether it's still freaking out in terms of rough distance, because axis and axis rotating is going to affect all of these things. We are still blinking. Winking and blinking and nod. So what happens when I start flying in a direction is they will sort of teleport into view. because they exist in the central area and are really not being shown anywhere else. Boink. They're tending to, when they disappear, what's happening there is one of those cards is being replaced with the object. Now, one of the things that I can do is simply scrap the resolution thing. Like, I'm not going to have so many of these that I can't just run them at full size. So let's see what that is like then. Because it's not responding very well to this. The bots are responding much better. We are simply not going to update sphere mesh is what. Case 19 becomes empty. Probably means I don't need to do rough distance either. In fact, no, I don't think I do. Not in here. Rough distance is tracking which of those are closer to the player position and assigning it as needed. Don't mind me going to throw another log on the fire and then we'll get right back to it. Another log or possibly two. Go. There we go. That should get going. Looks good. Alrighty. Let's try a couple of things. Firstly, I think I don't need rough distance. We do need these, though. Although, no, we don't need those. Not if they're fixed. Okay, so these are now asteroids. They are such asteroidy asteroids that they're completely fixed in space. The question is, if they're completely fixed in space, everything can bounce off of them. They don't have gravity towards each other, which is like unrealistic, but whatever. The texture is a modification of, let me see. Let me see if I can show you. Counterpart. Okay, so rock albedo. So that is a texture that I generated from the texture of granite, which is one of the bot textures. I multiplied granite by 4 and overlaid the 4 copies in small size over a expanded size version of it to make it a little more complicated. And then also because the original size was 1/4 of this. Then I made another variation on this in the same way, which is rock micro, which is designed to be overlaid over the first texture at a higher rate of difficulty detail. And then I made this. And that is the same texture, but with a spherized control and a border. And in fact, the transparency border does appear to work because that is being drawn with transparency, sure enough. I don't know why it's not being drawn that way in the Godot window. See how that is transparent, and yet when it's drawn in the Godot window, it is not being drawn with transparency. Mind you, I can draw it as overlay anyhow, and it'll work about the same. Draw it as lighten. So that's how I made that. And yeah, a piece of broken concrete would do just as well. This was a randomly generated texture. In any case, even greater mass. It's effectively infinite mass. It is ultimately bouncy. I don't think we need them to sleep, but it's fine. I think it needs to be awake if it gets collided with. All of the axes are locked, so it can't actually move either. Back over to here. Here's our magically teleporting guys. We're going to make these even bigger. Although arguably they are too big anyhow. Might be even more unreasonable at this stage. But I did want to see what would happen if they were ginormous and huge. They are ginormous and huge, and also we cannot see the ones off in the super distance. So here's what's happening. Here's the space we're in. The bots aren't being allowed to teleport inside them, but they are so close to each other that they are interpenetrating. So it becomes a matter of like flying through, possibly going and seeking one of the bots like this fellow. Boop. And you're supposed to find them. Only trouble is, space is so big. Oh, and see how that just appeared? And that just appeared? The positions of these are quite tricky. Some of them are real and some of them are imaginary. So as I head out in this direction, the ones that are being represented by cards are getting replaced by full-size instances. Now, full-size instances, these are, I think, larger than they need to be. So we're going to dial back the 16x. Because I'm more interested in finding out whether I can make a really annoyingly dense asteroid field. But you know what? And I don't think I need that. Do need player. Ooh, hang on. Oh, we're not doing process counter that way. Process counter will simply be 25. We'll assume that they all need to run. So some of these case statements, there's no relevance to them. But then some of them there are. And in particular, this is why they are appearing suddenly out of nowhere. So logically, what that means is we can have a general, it's a float, needs to say F. This rock size, it can be a factor of world size. World size seems much bigger when you're not actually dealing with such large objects in there. Position is randomizing to some extent. Whether that's working effectively is another question entirely. And then this stuff now all needs to be updated as follows. These are all the cards. Copy, paste, And we'll go to here. So one thing I could do here is have them be different sized asteroids while still being fixed in space. The neat thing about this, though, is if I can update all the cards, and it works, that will start looking like there are many more of them. So let's walk through all of this rather rapidly, at least as rapidly as I can. And we'll see whether that actually worked. If it did, it will be drawing these cards that are always facing the player, but there will be a lot of spheres hanging around in space. This would actually be a great place for a multi-mesh, especially if we're not updating it or moving it. Because if they are in fixed positions, I can add as many of them as I want as these fixed cards just expand way outwards in every direction. And every time you teleport from one side of the box to the other, everything will continue to be within whatever grid it is. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that very well. Let's copy this from here and see whether it's not too cumbersome. Sometimes things like this I will just do longhand on the assumption that it'll work. It's better for it to work than not work. This would also serve the purpose of adapting to multi-sized rocks. And I can probably even update the geometry in here rather than trying to update it in the physics engine. Or I'm sorry, the frame rate engine. In order to do that, I need to go and get that data from where I'd previously used it. Where was that? Here it was. Here's the geometry update. Don't need to worry about rough distance. There's the scaling of all of those things. And then here's where, see, we're getting the mesh instance again. Should be able to, if we can do that, we should be able to do this. Then rock size is bigger, well, that should be bigger too, stands to reason. So I'm typing up a storm and accomplishing nothing. It's all complaining and being sad. Why are you complaining and being sad so much? Oh, is it because it wants ints? I bet it wants ints. I bet that's its little problem. So there we go, that's what it wanted. And we need to do it for the Phantom and the regular one. Not sure why we're not doing that for bot. Oh, because we're only updating the Phantom. Or are we? What's going on here? Are we doing this for each one? Looks to me like we need to do this twice. So what we'll do is we'll do it in adjacent. Hang on. What we'll do is we'll leave it alone for the time being, because here's the thing. I don't know which this rough distance refers to. It could be a rough distance from the actual bot, or it could be a rough distance from the phantom. We're only updating the actual bot. It is working, but I feel like that won't work every time. But yeah, we'll ignore that for the moment. But we need mesh instance 3D2 also. Excuse me. So we will just do it twice. We're redefining this time. Oh, hang on. That's not even in the right place. We don't need to reinstantiate it. We can just reuse it. 3D2 as sphere mesh. Same deal. Same setup. This should produce... Oh, what on earth is going on here? Oh, no. Oh, no. What in heaven's name is going on here? It became very upset. How about this? Yay! I don't know why it did that. But it did. So public override ready. This is the overall class. So, well, it's not showing any errors, so I think the syntax was correct. Rock size of 2, but now we're updating all of the cards. There's our black hole. Here's one of our asteroids. We can bounce off of it, but it is as motionless can be. And we can see stuff off in the distance. And we can kind of see what our asteroids look like. See, there's one that has sort of appeared out of nowhere. So my hope is that I would have cards that would appear in the distance as you approach these things. They do appear, there does seem to be like things showing up. Right now I'm only seeing more bots. Let's see if we can see one of these asteroids appearing in a more convenient way. Also, there's a number of visual things I'm not entirely happy with, so I'm going to tinker with those a little bit while grappling with all this. So, Node 3D, World Environment, Radiance, that's not going to affect a damn thing. Ambient light, don't have that. Tone map, well, that's relevant, but fog, okay, we got that, but only moderately relevant. Sky, panorama, there's our skybox. An energy multiplier, that should be our brightness factor, and sure enough, it totally is. So one thing I can do is dim that down a hair to spare me the trouble of actually tinkering with it. I am kind of half inclined to spatter a bunch of pixels over it, so that there will look more clearly like there's stars. If I was to do that, it would probably also be a fine idea to update the texture while I was at it. Then also, seeing as I didn't end up editing that, we'll go back to here for the time being. So we've got this very large number of bots at the moment. What if instead we had a very large number of these rocks? And every single introduction, we're generating one of these rock sizes, and everything's being scaled relative to it, including the scale of the cards. Each one has its own card. This suggests we can go random. Random floating point value between from and to inclusive. So if I'm not mistaken, oh, hello. I'm not sure why that wouldn't work. Is it returning a double or something? Do I need to cast it? I needed to cast it. I'm not sure why it's returning a double. That seems like it should have been fine. This will give us a bunch of stuff. It may be a big mess. And when I say a bunch of stuff, I mean 100 rocks of different sizes. I think one of the things I wanted to do was alter the brightness of them. But I could do that with player as well. Oop, we are grinding to a halt, that appears. Doesn't want to start at 100. But it will. So it's what 100 rocks looks like. They got a tendency of magically appearing in space, or freaking out and disappearing. That is not optimal. Not only that, I have a very strong feeling that if they're able to do this, the business with the cards is not working. What it should be doing, if it was doing this correctly, would be instancing these like this. So you back off a little bit and they all disappear. But when they're getting ready to flash into appearance like that, we should be seeing something in that space. Specifically, what we should be seeing before they flash into appearance is a card at that size. On the other hand, I do think we do have random sizes. Yeah. That one's bigger than that one. So this is neat, but it needs to be way denser with rocks. Also, the thing that I was thinking about was that these are all a little brighter than I like. So, there are a number of possibilities. One of them is, rather than having them be self-illuminated like this, put a light on the player and then illuminate them like that. But the first thing I'm going to do, apart from bumping up the size even more and cutting down the minimum even more, is figure out what's up with these cards. So I don't appear to be able to multiply scale of the card by rock size. And if I did, it would be doing a much better job of looking like something. So what do I need to do in order to update scale for a card? These are the things. And yet scale doesn't act like it's working on them. Look, see, it's not being drawn at a different size, and it needs to be drawn much bigger than that. Inverse scale, it's not there. Existing scale does not care. It's like it's drawing in the center of what it thinks it is. See, there is the position, but it's being drawn facing. So maybe there's a billboard-related thing that I need to look at rather than transform. So the mesh, I got a feeling maybe I'm onto something there. Let's find one that is going to be in the position I want it. How about not you? You. Okay. Mesh. Going to the mesh in the mesh instance. What happens if the size gets changed? Ooh, they all get changed the same. That's not wrong, although size X and Y need to be changed. This might be pretty close to what I'm looking for. Mesh size X, mesh size Y. And yeah, these don't have individual characteristics, so all of those get updated simultaneously, which suggests that they need to be local to scene. So we'll see whether all these instances can be local to scene because we're telling them to be distinct sizes. I don't know whether that is also relating to this stuff. Okay, first let's save that. Then it's Mesh Instance 3D. It's under the name Mesh Billboard, but that's fine. Mesh Instance 3D size X and Y. But not that. But we can do mesh. Can we do mesh size? Well, that's not what I meant to do at all, even though it's giving me an accurate result. that is not available. Okay. Well, we're reaching into a mesh instance. It just happens to be called mesh billboard. And this is, in fact, the mesh. So we can get mesh. That will give us the mesh resource. What's this meant to be? Property size. Can we just do size as a vector too? And assume that the mesh is the billboard? Let's find out. No, you cannot. So I do need to get the node, I think. But if I was to just only get the mesh, I can't do this to it. So let's assume we're not. If I can get this to work for anything, it should work for all the things. So light map size hint. No, that's not what I'm looking for. We got a bunch of getters and setters. Set, so I'm looking for size somehow. But that's not going to give it to me, is it? So that I do not think that is relevant to what we're trying to do with mesh. But apparently we can do this. So we can start with the billboard. We can access mesh, but we can't actually access the size out of mesh. Hey, Calculus. Yeah, I've already tried scale. We're doing scale and it's doing nothing. But if we resize the X and Y size of the mesh that's being displayed, that would do the thing. So, let's see. So if we try to do, okay, so if we do get mesh instance 3D, we can get the object this is part of. And we have to have mesh instance 3D to get it, but we can't actually do anything with mesh off of it. What if we do like this? No. No, no, no. No, 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 no. That's not doing a thing. So we can't get a node like that. That's probably not correct. It'll do it, but I bet you that is not correct. Instead, let's see what happens if we do this. And then we'll try to assign it like that. And then do stuff off of this, like change the size of it now. Doesn't want to do that, does it? Doesn't want to do that either. We have a problem that we can probably fix if we have all the asteroids being the same size. Let me show you what that's about. Seeing as none of this is any good. All right. Put that back. Comment all of that stuff out on the grounds of it cannot work. And set rock size to be size is 7 through 9. That's still big. And go back here and 8. There. Now they're huge meshes, but they're going to be positioned offset. And it ought to honor that, and now we get to see whether it worked. Actually, you know what? Even smaller differences for the time being. Now let's see what we're looking at. And I gotta keep fussing with the fire. It was cold today. Fire doesn't want to go. If this works, it will look as if there's lots more of those guys out there. Except for they might be a little dark. Or indeed very dark. Because I don't think they're lit. So that could be worth some attention. But the thing about these is that they are all offset from the randomized position of the first one. Boy, is this taking a long time to go. Here we are. Aha. Okay. So now we have these guys, and you can see, and I need to set some of these up so that they are now it looks like there's lots more of these asteroids in the asteroid field, but most of them are just cards. See what this one's pointing at? The squares around the edges represent that simply being a card. These randomly appearing are not actually helpful. The squares around the edges also feel like, oh God. Okay, this interesting. So here's what's happening. The cards are there, but then the size of the actual asteroids appearing physically are way larger than that in turn. How much larger, I wonder? And you can tell which ones are which because you can see that they are square boxes. And we can see them turn. What's supposed to be happening is the same as would happen with the bots, where as you are approaching these little squares with asteroids drawn in them, they're supposed to snap to the actual size. but these are supposed to be cards of that size already. So some of this is kind of working, but it needs to not become much huger just by doing that. Also, they need to not be interpenetrating each other in this way. Okay, so, well, as long as we're doing that and it started to work, let's go whole hog. Oh, not 648 though. 64. Now they're much bigger. And if everything is scaled correctly, which it's not, we can make some sense of all of this. Let's start by not using as many damn rocks. One thing about these, though, they run very efficiently. And we already know we can have lots and lots of bots, and they should actually be colliding with those things so that they will be around the outside edges of them, although the rocks actually cannot move. So we will allow that to continue to run, and in about 8 minutes or so, I'm getting my tacos ready. While we wait for this to happen, I'm going to throw a log on the fire. And looky there. Note that I still need to get rid of that black box. It's a transparent texture, but it's not being loaded as one. I bet I can fix that. In fact, I totally should fix that. I'll do that next. First, keep our wood stove going. It's cold, cold, cold out here. It's been extra cold in Vermont. It was like literal 0 degrees Fahrenheit this morning. That's pretty cold. So let's see what the sizes of these do as we find our way through this ridiculous looking asteroid field. Not bad. Let's approach this one. What does it do as we approach it? It'll turn into the real thing. Does that simply mean that it looks exactly the same mostly and the black bar goes away? That's what's supposed to happen. We're getting very close to it. We shouldn't be able to get this damn close to it. Oh. Okay, it's being drawn on top of the bar. So that's geometry. That's still geometry, but it's being drawn just outside the range. I like those little guys against it. That's cool. So what's happening here is, see what we've got there? It's drawing that black box behind the actual geometry. What we do when we generate these, we're looking at the phantom one. And then as we go closer to it, it stops being the phantom one. And we bounce off it for realsies. But this is very close to the edge of the universe. So that's the real one. Back off a little bit. And it becomes the phantom one. Either way, though, we'll bounce. And so all of these guys, as they darken into darkness in the distance, those are all cards. or actually no, we can see the cards because the real ones overlap the cards a tiny bit. What needs to happen, oh, and look, some of them are completely dark. So that is, and then we can see the bots flying around among them, which is what I wanted to see happen. So yeah, I think the overlapping part, that's going to be fine. The shading is medium fine, but I want all of these to be not as brightly lit. Fog seems to be working mostly okay, except for the stuff off in the great darkness. That could be a little brighter. And I haven't changed the background texture at all. Okay, so some of this is going to live here. Mesh instance. Albedo. Okay. Color. If we turn the base color down a good amount, quarter brightness. I believe it's going to be the same for the other one, but I can find out pretty quickly. Yep. They're essentially duplicating each other there. And then the detail mask, what's happening as we do that is it's adding. And right now we cannot see a thing about any of them. There's albedo, there's my scale. We'll update the scale as well. And then I want to go into here, and I want to go to Rocket Billboard and look at its import settings. So these should each have distinct import settings, but this is the one that needs to be able to be transparent. That's probably fine. That's probably fine. It's not going to have a normal map. HDR compress. It's not HDR, so I shouldn't care. Channel pack. Well, what do we have for alpha? Well, fixing alpha border is clearly not happening. It does have alpha channel, but it should already have that stuff set up. Does it have pre-multiplied alpha? There's one way to find out. Let's re-import the billboard and then have a look at what that, hi. Oh, we're looking at bot. I want to look at rock. Okay, we're looking at the card. The card is not showing transparency anywhere, and it should be able to. Nor am I actually looking at that stuff. I'd have to go back to import. So that didn't actually change a damn thing from what I had. Although it's changing the edges a little bit from what that was. That's closer to what it is meant to look like, but I'm still not seeing its transparency. Why? There's our mesh instances. Now ha 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 ha. Look at that. Alpha transparency, please. Now, is that going to help? Well, we're trying to draw unshaded and not disable fog. Oh no, that's mesh instance. Hang on. Hang on. We want mesh billboard here. So for mesh instance, we actually don't want transparency, but then we switch over to billboard, and this is where we do want to find where it says transparency and enable it. But will we? There's the mesh. There's orientation. Aha, there's a material and shading and transparency. So we told it to be unshaded. It'll run faster that way. But we haven't done a thing about transparency. This is mesh billboard, all the billboards with alpha transparency. This is with all the mesh billboards. Add. Add is an issue. Add does not replace. Add just makes everything become bright and luminous. But I'll tell you, that did get rid of the problem with the transparency. Oh, hi. Look at that. Blend mode. That is correct. We can also do other dumb things like multiply makes everything be jet black, which is super helpful. But alpha transparent, okay, so alpha scissor, alpha hash, and depth prepass. It's the slowest to render. Interesting. So these are just cards. We should not need to worry about shadows or any of those things. Don't need to worry about depth prepass. Scissor may be the one I'm looking for. Let's see what it looks like if we go to it. Alpha anti-aliasing. Well, that looks kind of nice. So what we're looking at the edge here, it's what things get cut off in the alpha channel. So we can make it be wider or a little narrower, and we're seeing it overlaid against other ones. In literal 0, it seems to still allow some pixels to be there. I know that full alpha is just straight up black. So this is going to do something different when I run it, is what? Let's see what it does. Might look a lot nicer. Still haven't solved the different sizes thing. And it's still taken forever to run. But that might simply be because I'm making so many of these. Maybe we don't need as many of these. Honestly, I'm not sure why that would become an issue. I feel like I'm not seeing all of the rocks that are actually being created. And I'm very interested in whether they are interpenetrating. They are. But Oh, I remember one other thing I wanted to do. I wanted to make it go darker. So see what we're looking at here? There's a number of things going on. One of them is that off in the darkness, and mind you, I can address this by turning down the background brightness. But they're coming out of pitch blackness. They are interpenetrating each other a bunch more than I would actually want. But the motion of our bots and our bots' phantoms around them seems to be on the whole what I'm looking for. I want it to be a lot less bright, and the instancing is having an effect on that. If I tell it to disable fog for all of the billboards, they are all going to be full brightness. Oh, interesting. Albedo is probably brighter than I need it to be. I can bump it back to 128 and see how that behaves. Because, of course, these are all meant to be kind of distant. And then I'm not entirely satisfied with my mesh instance stuff. And I'll tell you why. It all looks too bright. Also, the number of segments it's got is clearly inadequate. Maybe that's what's taking so long to generate. Okay, so there is, I can't see it. Maybe if I zoom real close I can see it. Signs point to no, not until I hide literally everything. Or, hang on, did I just get a glimpse? I am indeed getting a glimpse. So, here we are. And material transparency disabled is correct here. Shading. See, I don't have light in the scene. That causes something of a problem. But maybe not that much of a problem, because the light can be part of the player, and the other stuff is meant to be like little twinkling lights moving around the darkness of all these moons and things. So disable ambient, so it doesn't receive ambient. Disable fog, yes, if we are doing this just by virtue of light. And then this actually doesn't end up needing to be changed, because it's okay if it's extremely bright. Or maybe just very bright, because it's also unlit until we light it. How about these? Do we have... Okay, there's our color. That's the same as it was before. I'm not sure that filter part changes or matters. And of these can also be per pixel. And now everything is a perfect absolute black. In fact, it's going to be that even if we run it in the program. We have just successfully, maybe also I don't need these to be as large as they are. We've certainly got enough of them. If I can just calculate them in such a way that the physics engine figures out what it's doing. I believe they're interpenetrating each other too damn much. And that's what's causing it to choke like this. Yeah, I do have another meter coming. Also, I can't help but notice that I have forgotten to turn on my stove, so fire cam, I gotta go and thaw out some boots. Alrighty. Now all of our asteroids are complete absolute black because there's no lights in the scene. And their sizes seem to be shifting every now and then as they become real. So that implies this is a perfect test bed for fooling around with something else. Firstly, pure rocks. Secondly, if rock size of 8 is not actually working correctly, let's try rock size of 7 with no randomness. Also, one of the things that I need to do here, I'm going to need to run position in such a way that I can check against all previous rocks and not interpenetrate them because they are fixed in place and cannot move. So that's going to be a thing. We're going to have to see about that. But I've got a very quick thing which I can tell whether or not, see, it was much happier this time, whether or not the sizes bump up in size as I approach them. See those ones that just appeared. They kind of are flashing in there out of nowhere, aren't they? Okay, two things. One, this is boring and I want to be able to see those colors or those textures. So I'm going to go back into here and throw a light on player. Doesn't have to be directional. We can have it be omnidirectional. Yeah, directional is not actually useful. There's our label. Now let's see what we can do with this. So that is normal. Projector probably doesn't have to be a thing. Oh, and yeah, we don't need to have it be a projector. Specular blob. Let's maybe not have that. We shouldn't have to bake everything in because it's not working that way. Because we don't have global illumination at all. Let's not cast real-time shadows. That might be handy. First of all, let's find out if it worked at all. There is now a light on player. And we're starting up a little faster than before, which is good. The light on player appears to be doing diddly squat. It's still completely black. What's up with that? That's probably not relevant either. What about, oh, okay, hi. Range attenuation. This is a fancier light model than I was bargaining for. Here's my range, and it needs to be way bigger in order to light any of the things. Light will never reach anything outside this radius. Fair. Let's see what happens when we bump this up more in a little bit. Can it work? If we have a giant light space, which apparently this is my giant light space, let's see if it has an effect on the objects that are otherwise unlit. I might have to go back to unlit. I think I have to go back to unlit. And there is the void, boink. Which can move around relative to all these little guys who are finding their way around. I was going to be making this background darker. Oh, do we have light after all? Okay. Our light's just so damn weak that it's useless. But that's functioning light. Cool. Onwards. Back to Godot. Attenuation. Maybe attenuation is not what I want to see. They shouldn't honestly... Look, we have no geometry. It's like, woof. Yeah, we don't have volumetric fog. That's not a thing. Projector. That is the area the light is being cast from. It does nothing in this situation because all our stuff is really flat. We don't have a lot of detail in geometry. Our geometry is really simple. No shadows, no distance fade. How about no attenuation? Constant brightness, smoothly attenuate at the end of the range. Let's find out what that's... Oh, negative attenuation? Hi. Unexpected results. Well, that sounds completely lovely, but I'm not going to do that right now. It said an attenuation of 0 will still function. Let's see whether we've actively illuminated any of our stuff, given the bots are like little self-luminous things. In fact, let's make more of them. 632 rocks. Should still launch fairly quickly because there's fewer rocks. The rocks are what are interpenetrating each other. He says as it stops running as fast as I thought. Okay. Now we have large numbers of bots, and we have large numbers of these. They're bouncing into me and making me move, and the planets that are real close by you can get a sense of what's going on there, but all the other stuff is completely and absolutely blank. So that's not great. It's kind of cool, and then I can fly towards things, and then they start... Oh, okay, that was weird. See, there's the card coming into existence. The card is substantially bigger than the object is. So that needs to be bigger. So first things first. I don't know why I'm saying that. I always do all the things at the same time. Rock size, 8, compared to the 64 that the other stuff was like. Position, maybe I can keep a reference of these things and compare against them. I've got a single script here. Do I have a thing where I can set position and then see whether it's colliding with anything? Because that's what I'd want. I don't think I have that. I'm not sure. This proved unnecessary. We just set it manually. And ran with that. Rock size also relatively unnecessary because we don't get to set it individually. That can probably be smaller. It's probably fine. Might be slowing things down a little. Ooh, hi. Might be slowing things down a bit. So our billboards are not receiving light properly. But some of this might simply be because my range is unreasonable. we can find out what happens if we do this. Only thing being affected is the rocks. There's only so many of them. Oh, we're running it from Godot rather than running it from the other thing. Probably fine. He says as nothing happens. Okay. Right on. Now what happens when we... see, that turned from a card into a actual thingy. Only so many of these are visible, but we've got a lot of cards about. Let's continue going closer to some of these cards and watching what happens when they change. So that's clearly a card. And we can... and it became a little bit bigger. See, it needs to be exactly the same as it switches, and also much darker. How much bigger does it get as it goes? A lot just changed, right? Everything went snap. I think it got a tiny bit bigger and doesn't need to. Attenuation seems fine. Don't think we need volumetric. Don't have volumetric fog, so that's fine. And I'm going to want most of those to be dark black. For that matter, I was going to do another thing. Let's fire up Affinity Photo just for a moment. And open. Well, hang on a moment. That's not correct. And not open that, but instead open Pano Skybox. I should go and change this first. I'm a little flustered and doing dumb things, but that's normal. I'm trying to do too many things at once. So counterpart. So what's the name of this bloody thing? Subblock Pano Skybox. Option drag to the desktop. In case something goes horribly wrong, I want to be able to get it back. Now we can open it. And now we can, let's see. At exactly 100%. I can dim it. That's not it. That was just making it transparent, and we don't need it to be transparent. So what I'm looking to do here is make it darker, but also throw some twinkling stars on here. And how are we going to do that? Let's start by doing new pixel layer. And I can probably fill that with noise. There's add noise. Why are we not seeing a result? Okay, how about instead of doing that, we delete that and then we duplicate, and maybe there will be something it can work with? Yeah, there we are, looking at actual pixels. Now what happens when we add noise? Or do I need to have it selected? Select all. Okay, it sort of moved. Haha. So monochromatic. So that worked. So how about if I, hang on. Delete that. Now we're looking at just blankness. And let's set a color. Color can be black. So now we have that. Now we add noise to that and then maybe mess with it. So there's the black being selected. Denoise, add noise. There we go, that's noise. Gaussian's probably fine. Monochromatic is, I think, what I would like. Before and after view, split view. And at this stage, I don't want that noise. Although I hit lighten, and then that's more or less creating the effect that I would like. Except for this needs to be a bunch darker. So we go back to normal. And then apply another filter, or perhaps a adjustment layer. Because we're doing a levels. That was auto levels. That's not what I wanted. Let's see if it'll do a levels that isn't auto levels. It's not showing me any auto level or any levels that isn't auto levels. That's unfortunate. No plugins. Lighting, that's 100% not what I'm looking for. I think it wants an adjustment level, adjustment layer. Here's an adjustment layer. White level. And gamma should help. I want the opposite of this. There we are. And then we can just raise black level. And we start getting a stars look. But they're all exactly 1 pixel in size. We'll merge it and go back to layers. And then have that be a lightener screen or something. Color dodge draws things, but not in the way that I want. Add ain't bad. However, I want to do an adjustment layer here as well. So here's our adjustment layer on this. Gamma is almost certainly what I want, but perhaps not. See, we don't want to do that. But we don't necessarily want to do this either. So if black level went up, now we're just looking at stars. And a white level went more intense, that's not good either. So here's where we started. And that's much more laid back. And if I balance it between bringing up the black level and fussing with the gamma, we can still have some color in there, but on the mostly dark side of things, at which point I will simply export as itself. See if it can replace itself. Okay. So that was fun. I don't think I need to re-import, but it shouldn't hurt. I don't think it needs to generate maps for that. Save. I remember OmniLight was rather intense, so take that down again. I don't think we need that to be any different because we're not baking shadows. Here we are with this. Let's see what we're looking at. We just did a bunch of weird changes. We've got a saved version of the cube map. Okay. I see an immediate problem with this concept, which is that all of my actual stars on the cube map are giant now. It's kind of cool. But all the bots are even smaller than the stars. That's not actually what I had in mind. It's kind of cool. I think it's a little too intense. But you know what? I can probably fool with that. And a lot of them are about right. It's just the ones that are farthest away are tiniest. Although I could make those be the size of I could make them be the size of the stars. See if I can't. And this is fairly useless. This is probably why it takes a while to launch. We've got all of these things here. The ones in the distance are actually black dark. And as we move towards them, more suddenly appear, and the ones that were mostly black suddenly pop into existence. So there's a concern. So what are we doing? Let's make the light go more. So this is what's supposed to be physically accurate if it's 2A. Question is that going to look remotely like anything physically accurate, or is that just going to be all messed up? And I don't think we're rendering shadows, so I'm not sure it matters. This is all the very fancy stuff. Oh, also, a little bit of specular maybe. That might be interesting. After all, it is geometry we're looking at. There might be a purpose for having it be like that. Let's continue to use less and less rocks. Not like that. See, if I can make them not interfere with each other, that things might run a little bit better. I keep feeling like I should be looking at more of them than I am. Oh. Okay, I see how this works. Inverse square law, that means that we have to get really close up. And there's our specular highlight. Yeah, I'm not loving the squares. The sky is made up of squares. That seems not optimal. I can do a better job of that with some other kind of sphere or something. Can scale something to have dots that are the appropriate size. Or just make instances of something. So that's not awesome. So let's get out of here. Go back to here. Attenuation of 1. Honestly, I was doing better with attenuation of nada. Attenuation of 1 and range of 4096. Energy will also increase it, but then that will make everything close to me blinding. And specular, I don't know how much that's helping. Inverse light. That'd be weird. That'd be deeply weird. Speaking of deeply weird, let's try lots and lots and lots and lots of rocks. It might take a while for this one to start up. Or not. Okay. Now we have darkness. And the attenuation is super unhelpful. So I immediately know that's not going to work. So now what I'm wondering is, do these actually need to be fixed in place or simply fixed in rotation? So let's get weird. Much less attenuation, but that's not the thing I'm thinking about at the moment. Let's get weird. Let's get really weird. Bounce, yes. Mass, not as much as you'd think. And linear. Oh, you can't rotate, but now you can move, and you're not as heavy. This could get messy, but in such a nice way. We just changed the physics engine a bunch. We changed the lighting a little bit. Lighting shouldn't actually be affecting much. Also, I wanted to let's jump back into this scenario again. So block level can stay, but let's just make everything a whole bunch darker. Without being too overkill, maybe. Merge and save that over our speckled with little squares version. I mean, I could just run one that's even bigger, make the squares smaller, but I don't like that very much either. Export. PNG. File size considerably smaller now. And now that's a little bit darker. We're about 15 minutes from me going and having tacos, unless I get carried away, as I so often do. Also, I do need to keep throwing wood on the fire. Let me do that. Fire has an unending hunger for wood, much like I have an unending hunger for hacking away on these silly video games. go. Now let's see what horrors we've unleashed. Now they can move, so they don't have to interpenetrate. Unless they want to, which I suppose is possible. Okay, we're super dark. However, I think things are moving about, and I was hoping something like that would happen, so let's bail out of here and go and figure out why everything is too damn dark. I bet it has to, well, you know, there's ways and ways we can solve this. We don't have to use a lighting model at all. Lighting is being a pain in the butt. I've been doing things with fog instead. That might be better. It shouldn't be too hard to test this. So we got mesh instances and billboards. Here's our albedo. Unshaded, but allow fog. Micro texture shouldn't, we got a detail texture in there. Its blend mode is add. Although in this way we don't actually get to see what that looks like, which is not awesome. Nor do we get to fuss with some of these things. Mesh instance is going to act exactly the same way because it's a clone. These are clones of each other. Transparency, fine. Shading mode, unshaded. And then do not disable fog. We're going to allow fog. And we'll hit save. Having disabled a bunch of those things. Let's see how silly this got. We're doing 100 asteroids, all of which are rather large, but they should bounce. Boink. Time to bounce the rocks into other rocks. Oh, look, there's a pair of guys flying around. Oh, it went so far away that it turned into a card. Boom. Bounce into that. Hey, hey. Not only that, I think the bots are pushing them. I was hoping something like that would happen. Oh, and I'm getting pushed by something which may possibly be another asteroid. Boink. We're playing pinball with the asteroids here. I kind of appreciate the way in which the ones off in the distance are all super dark, although they are flashing to brightness rather aggressively. Or back away from brightness again. So this is super weird looking, but kind of cool. The size of them doesn't need to be this big, and the shading doesn't need to be the way it is. So here's where we're doing size. So if we do that, this is no longer forcing them to interpenetrate because they're part of the physics engine. We still have too much brightness, but there's a way that we can deal with that too. Namely, let's, in our last few moments of stream, and of course, remember, if I'm having too much fun with it, I may not actually go and have food. But I should. I should go and make tacos. I get to have an end to my day some days. Here we have Rock Micro. Rock Micro is the thing which can be darker, because it being darker will make it match with the other stuff better. So let's open this up with Affinity Photo and darken it. How much is the question? How about that much? And then export back to the folder we're in, having saved a copy of it. Here we are. Now, without having changed anything, it's going to look different. The question is, how close did I come to what I needed to be? Yeah. Also, how's my sizes doing? Okay, see that? These are now smaller than the card is. And maybe I need to re-import it. Hang on. Hang on. So we'll zero in on the correct size. And we'll go and find Rock Micro and re-import it. And then while we're at it, we're looking at the billboard. The billboards are on the dark side. They don't necessarily need to be quite as dark as all that, so we can bump that up just a bit. Until it's about the brightness of the fully textured one. This is all pure hackery, but I mean, what else are you going to do? It's pure hackery for a reason. Also, back to Node 3D, where we now have the nice darker world there, which seems bluer as well. Well, our world environment contains stuff like the panorama, but it also contains fog and light color. So we can have it fog stuff more, and we can have the light color more accurately reflect what we're seeing as that shade of blue. Oh, do we have an eyedropper? Can it work on this? Would be awesome. There we are. How about that? Let's see where we got. Hey, Grens, yeah, you did make it for the last little bit. Also, I could have been lowering the... Ah, okay. Now, our real ones are a little darker than they should be. Or need to be. And the cards start out brighter and then it quickly fades to extremely dark indeed. But this is starting to look a lot more amusing. Back into Godot, where we start playing with rock, and mesh instance can brighten up quite a bit. Now our detail thing is dark, but we can brighten up the main color, which we're not seeing right now. But if we zoom in real close, there is the possibility that, see, that's what that looks like with all of these other things on top of it all. Here's mesh instance, material, albedo, there's color. So if we brighten that up quite a bit, the detail texture is not actually being drawn in such a way that you can make it look different. Blend mode is add. If we did it as mix, well, that's actually not bad. And the whole thing still looks kind of dark, but you know what? If we just bump up the base color, maybe that mixed with the darkened detail color will actually be nice. We can but try. It's a little hard to see because it's completely surrounded by these. Also, what do I have regarding our billboards? I feel like I've got some stuff going on here. So we can also trim the look of that, but I believe, well, we can try to do nearest neighbor sampling. That'll make them be a little bit more detailed looking. They are billboard and local. And UV2 padding. Something is going on with this, I think. Well, if it is, I can't tell what it is. Something in here was doing stuff that interests me, but I can't remember what it is. Does it have to do with texture? Oh, it's like 5. Let's just run this and see what we got. Oh, I remember I was going to do another thing that was going to make this amusing. Let's make it amusing for our final spree and then see what we get. So here's rock. Rock is a rigid body. Now its mass is exactly the same as all the bots. These are all going to go berserk now. We're not necessarily going to keep this, but here's a little final burst of silliness for your pleasure and enjoyment. And it should all pretty much work if I've got this calculated out correctly. We'll run our 600 bots, or we'll run 500 bots and 200 rocks. Not 200. This is going to be busy as hell. And a little bit crazy. Let's see what this looks like. Here's our new asteroid field. Except for now, you can ram these and they go flying. And all these bots are ramming them as well. So the faster you go, the more challenging everything becomes. There. Now, we have asteroid field from hell. And I could have the visible rotation of these, but this is kind of, I mean, assuming we can make them be heavier, they're being pushed around by all these damn bots. The bots are going crazy with them. But then you have to go and find, I can also have the ones that aren't static cards rotating, but right now they are fixed. So you might need to go and find some of these guys. Like, here's one. What you doing? And I do actually have the win condition going. In other words, if I find dull sparkle, it'd go, hey, you win. Now that might be easier done than said. But hey, this poses interesting challenges though, doesn't it? It looks kind of weird shifting around among all of these things, but then that stands to reason because you're not even supposed to be doing this. And I feel like I could make this work better if I did a mesh instance and some of these were just out of sight. The only ones I should care about are the ones that are within range of being run over, but all of these ones that are actually just cards, like if I rotate this way, the ones that are cards look like they are pivoting because they're staying attached. The ones that turn into actual objects, whether they be the rail one or whether they be the phantom one, are in fact rotating. So there's a big obvious difference between the ones that are cards and the ones that are physical. And a lot of these are just cards. Facing side to side, it's not as much of a concern. And yeah, the bots are knocking all of these things around like mad. You can even see off in the distance where it's real dark there, and you can just see the cards, which are not actually spheres, they're not actually geometry. Only the ones that are right next to you. You can see the difference between the ones that are geometry and ones that are not. But the bots are knocking everything about and making it all move. They're trying to clear a space for themselves. And if I get going real fast, you can see as they change from cards into the real objects. Also, my directions are not good. I point at something and hit forward, and it doesn't really answer to me very well. But we're kind of looking at a giant infinite asteroid field. It's not great, but it's kind of like a giant instant asteroid. So with all of these tiny dots moving everywhere, in front of and behind the either geometry or the dot. See, if I had these be fixed in space and then instanced out a bunch of them in every direction in a grid, it would look like they never moved or changed form. And there would be an increasingly vast number of them off in all directions. And I could even use different numbers, like this is a very smooth circle. They don't need to have this much geometry to them. But yeah, now we have bots and a massive giant asteroid field. Let's run it one more time before I go and have tacos. Way fewer rocks, and up to our maximum asteroid bot count again. Now you're not going to see 10, you're going to see more because they're instanced. the nearest ones are visible. See, you get closer to it and it turns into a real thing. Like that. But off in the distance, that is a card moving around among... You see it started moving? That's because a bot hit it. These purple-colored ones are hanging around among this one. Are they going to fly into it and cause it to move? They might, or they might not. Yellow one flying behind that asteroid. Or moon. They're moons. They're clearly not asteroids because they don't have enough geometry to them. That guy was moving. Who's moving him? Could it be this one that's moving kind of fast? We're going to follow one of these until it runs into an asteroid and knocks it in some direction. Because they can. I'm liking how the cards can be dark from the... you see it as sort of a dark circle, then move closer, and at some point it becomes a real one, and then the dark circles pop back into existence over there. So yeah, this is only 10. It just looks like more because each one is instanced in many directions, and all those directions are represented as a single ungeometry card. Only the ones that are closest have geometry. Which simply raises the question of what if we made them huge? And so I'm going to do that before going and having tacos. Transform, scale, no, but here's where we got... Oh, no, wrong one. Billboard. Billboard. So this stuff we do not care about. We don't have scale, but we do have size. Now they're even bigger. So if we doubled the size, presumably that means we need to go into the code, hit a quick save, go into rock, and rather than 7.75, it's going to be like 16 point something. And let's see if I guessed that right. We're going to have even larger planets than before. I did not. How much bigger does this get? Okay, quite a lot bigger. Alrighty. So rather than 7... How's that? Is that any better? As I'd kind of eyeballed that into existing. Do you get larger or smaller as I approach you? You got a lot larger. Okay. Well, I had 7.75. I see no reason why it should stay that size, but what if it did? What would happen then? What should happen is I'm going to have these rocks hanging around, and then as you approach it, there becomes a smaller, like that. So what I'm trying to do is come up with whatever size it needs to be that fills up the space equal to how big that billboard is. How about 9? What do we get from 9? Now what do we got? Okay, that's still not close to big enough. Rock size of 14. I just changed the other thing from 32 to 64, if I remember correctly. I can go and look it up. No, to 128. So then it was 64. Square root of 64 is 8. That's pretty close to what I had. What about 11? So I don't know if that's even a relevant calculation. But that's what I was trying to figure out. So let's just iterate in the direction. 32 is way bigger than they were before, so things could get a little messy. Things have got a little messy. They are overlapping each other like nothing I've ever seen. And if I approach them, oh, they're just freaking the heck out. My God. My rocks are having a hard time existing. The struggle is real. Yay, space rocks. Whee! So that's clearly not working. Half of that, 16. So if it's literally the cube of the thing, okay, now that's bigger than the billboards are. Now let's walk it down. 15. There's doubtless a way of figuring out why it's doing this crazy thing. I feel like 14 was too small. But in lieu of being able to figure out why it's doing the crazy thing, I'm just going to fly towards this and see how much bigger the real geometry is when it shows up. Bigger. So 14. What I did was I increased the size of the card. So 14. Same deal. We're going to try it again. And then I get to go and have dinner. Are you bigger or smaller than the card? 14, 14, 14. Bigger. $13. We're just going to walk it down until we have something that's working. That's a card. That's bigger. We're trying to exactly duplicate the size of the manually set card size, which is like 128 or something, with the programmatically set size of the sphere that's being generated. That's a card. Bigger or smaller? Bigger, but not by a huge amount. 11. Once I'm finished, I am going to maybe make them be a little bit heavier and then fill space with the things. Okay, that's geometry, that is not. Oh, now it's not changing. Okay. It's fine. Let's approach this one instead. Maybe a little... No, that's about right. It didn't seem to change size all that much. So there is one thing that we can do which will be interesting. We can make our world size bigger. The rest of this should stay, well, actually I don't know if that's true. I probably just threw the calculation off, but you know what? That's fine. So you guys can be a little bit heavier. Still bouncy. We're not locking... Yeah, we're locking in all directions. It's fine. Okay, let's see. And we'll make a bunch of them because it's a larger space now. We're probably not figuring this all out correctly. I stand corrected. I think maybe it is filling the space correctly. How are we doing? Yeah. No, these are the right size. So as we travel through the infinite asteroid field, most of these things are actually unanimated cards. Oh, we got to see the edge. See that? That is geometry with the edge of the card showing through. Neat. So we still get to see the card even though we're also seeing the geometry. And then it disappears at the last moment. So we still got our sort of blinking light behavior going on. Oh, those just appeared out of nowhere. Heading towards a seemingly empty area of the space only to be completely overwhelmed by these things showing up. So the hope is that they don't be flashing and appearing all the time like that. And I believe I know how I can do it, and it's probably going to involve having them not appear quite like this. But I think I can still do it. what I can do is have the distant ones be lower geometry, and I can just make a grid of them going out in all directions. Now this is a lot of these guys filling space, to the point where it's a little annoying. So what I can do is, let's say the number of bots and the number of rocks are linked. So we're running 600 bots and still getting good frame rate. If we did the square root, it would be 24. And that's going to be a little more manageable. So if we have an incrementing level, see, this is all leading towards something. Total bots less than level. And square root level. And then we can just continue ramping it up. Every time you find your counterpart, you're starting over. And it ends up working kind of like this. This would be a high-level scene. So you can kind of go around and, well, see, that's not great. It makes it look as if there's nothing over here. And yet, I promise you there is. See, they just appeared. So these are some of the guys where if you chase them, you'll be interacting with multiple layers because they are snapping back and forth between sides of the map. And that's them having snapped into, so now they're going in opposite directions. So yeah, I need to instantiate these in such a way that they will appear, perhaps even let you bonk them around like this. But then I also need to instantiate a mesh grid where we're making a big framework of these, possibly as simply a multi-instance is what would work. And then rather than have them appear or disappear, there will be a multi-instance of all of these guys everywhere that is, I might need a closest all the same. But rather than having these sort of blank areas there, it just needs to be a grid work of geometry like this as 3D geometry and not billboards. See, it'll all be a 3D sphere like these, but then there needs to be lots more of them off in each direction like that. Perhaps even more so than the way I've got the bots going. And so then you will have your asteroid field that seems to stretch on forever, except for that there's even going to be apparent asteroids in these areas that look clear. So the reason this is not actually working for what we're trying to do here is not because this area is bad. See, it's basically fine. You can go, here's an asteroid, I am bouncing my face off it, boing. And then there's apparently other stuff off in the distance. That needs to be real geometry, but without colliders. And then the collider will be the nearest one, perhaps even only switching the collider and not bothering switching other geometry in. And then it's going to be instanced. So there will be like one here, and then one off there, and then one even farther, and one even farther, a grid of them. And they will be offset by world distance, so that if you are flying through the universe like this, This is me flying up, but never mind that. As you pass one and it shows up behind you, the other one world distance away, is out there. And then as you approach it, you get closer to... I wonder whether I can actually see any of these in their form. So what will be even more fun is having them have gravity to each other. And I had a way of doing that, and this is not going to be it. But one thing about it is I'm now seeing closer to the original intention, especially if I don't try to move around too much. It does, in fact, look like, oh, hi, I'm in a big asteroid field, except for they're all spheres, but whatever. I could make other things, and if I make other things, they would have to be very close to a sphere because they'd get instanced in every direction. Although I can make lower poly things and it would work. And then we've got these little guys going around off in the distance there. Anything that is a dot is a bot that you can go and talk to. Like, for instance, let's go and spot a dot in the distance that I might want to go and talk to. If I feel like that might be... The one I'm looking for is Hotel California. There's only one of it. But anything that is a dot, regardless of whether these asteroids are appearing and disappearing in the background, if I see a dot, I can go to it. There's one silhouetted against blackness. And this is what it was. Mind you, it's yellow, so it's going to be switching back and forth between a card and a ball. But there it is, or indeed was. There it is. There, that's the one I was looking for. There's another one heading off the distance. And it was bright because it was another yellow one. But yeah, see, the universe sort of overlaps and multiplies. But if I can get this stuff to not flash around like this, but actually look more persuasive rather than the level of detail popping is killing me here. But if it wasn't level of detail popping, it would be kind of amazing. Oh, I bounced off of it. I bounced off of it because it's actually heavier than it was. But if we didn't have this LOD popping, then this could become kind of cool. Point. And with that, it's 5:30. I wasn't going to stay up until... I wasn't going to keep doing this as long as I am. Oh, let's bounce between these and see if we can bridge the gap. Boink, 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 and back we go. Oh, I moved them. I spread them apart. Boink. Get moving, you. Boof. Boof. Can I get it moving so fast that I can see it show up on the other side of the universe? Boof. I think so, because I think it's this one. Unless it's this one. Slowing down a bit. Yeah, I think this is the one that I was just hitting. That's how close it is. And to be even sillier, we could have you have gravity to all of these. Then you would be orbiting them all at once. Or they could all have gravity to each other. Or, I don't know, something else entirely. Let's play a trick shot and bounce these off each other. Boink. Nope, I did successfully do the trick shot. That's going that away, that's going that away. The largest pool balls in the universe. Pool balls in space. And eventually, we'll get the bit where you get to shoot these these brightly sparky zaps. Yeah, what I would be wanting to do is literally that. What I want to do is have one of these and probably have it be subject to getting bonked around by the bots. But rather than these cards, which you see at various distances, they're the black objects, and then there are also these, you see them slightly rotating as they go? Those are the cards. I don't want to use cards for the asteroids. I want to use geometry so that they all basically look like this, perhaps with lower level of detail. But it needs to be a multi-mesh, because a multi-mesh will be rendered more cleanly, and it's just instanced. So you run a multi-mesh, you get to have the geometry here, including these rather large spheres, and then maybe the ones off in the distance, they're multi-mesh, and it's a big old grid work to the point where they're kind of disappearing off in a line. Like the bots, they only have instances in each direction one time over because they're so small that you can't see them past a certain distance. Those are the dots in the distance. But these, you'd be sitting on top of one of them. Like, for instance, this one. And there's its top. So you'd be sitting on top of one. Oh, I bounced it down. You'd be sitting on top of one of them. You look off in the distance, and there's a row of them fading off into infinity. And you look in 90 degrees off, there's another row of them fading off into infinity, and then another row of them fading off into infinity. And then there's some other ones that you can actually reach and touch, and each of those have a row fading off into infinity. Which means if you head in the direction of one of those, you're kind of constantly passing through them, and there's no level of detail popping or anything because they're all just geometry. It's just that as you get closer to them, it'll maybe go to the full res rather than popping into existence from what is clearly a 2D card. That's clearly a 2D card, and then as I approach it, there we go, there's one, there's another. And so those snapped into existence as geometry, and visibly very different, but the size is about right, because I took pains to get the size about right. And then they kind of flash around like that, because the thing that I was doing for making the bots work under those circumstances doesn't work as well on the asteroids. But that's for another day. Maybe this coming Thursday, I can do a little work as far as like trying to learn how multi-meshes work and instance that, and then go from there. And that could be quite amusing. But that is for another time, because I need to go and make my dinner, which is, of course, tacos. And I need to throw another log on the fire, clearly. So, yeah. Yep, so I'll be experimenting with multi-mesh. Again, I have to do 27 different versions of each one. But with multi-mesh, that should actually work. It'll just be instanced, and they don't actually all have to have geometry or anything. I can just see where I get with it, basically. So yeah, taco time. I will be good. I'll stop working on this, and I'll go and have some food, and do whatever other work I need to do on Wednesday, and I'll catch back up with you on Thursday, and we'll see whether we can get this asteroid stuff working any better. What would be really cool is if you could shoot zaps at the asteroids like you were playing literal asteroids, or maybe just butt your head into them and break them into smaller asteroids that are also instanced in the same way I'm talking about. But we'll see about that. For the time being, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.